There's a problem in the world of triathlon swim coaching. Many swim coaches out there are former swimmers who got into triathlon. And the problem with this is that it leads to the advice they give being grounded in what they learned in the pool and not in open water. The thing is, open water swimming, especially when you have to bike and run after getting out of the water, is very different than pool swimming. So the training we do needs to be different than typical pool swim training. I even know one instance of an elite college swimmer going into a triathlon with no open water swim training and literally having to be pulled out of the water by kayaks. That's how different triathlon swimming is from pool swimming. We'll tell you how it's different and what you should do differently in your training here today. What's up, motivators? My name is Taren. When ordinary people want to accomplish something extraordinary in endurance sports, they choose our totally free Motive training plans. You're ready to take on that next big challenge? Let's do it. Back in 2019, I did some work with Lucy Charles Barkley and her husband Reese Barkley. Lucy is known for being the best swimmer in long distance triathlon. She met Reese when they were kids on the local swim team. Now, Reese is also a fantastic swimmer and faster than Lucy in the pool, but get them into open water and Lucy leaves him in her wake. This is because Reese has a very traditional pool swim stroke, while Lucy has a messy stroke that's better for open water. In fact, Lucy's coaches would often chew her out for how messy her stroke was, but it works pretty damn well for triathlon, while Reese's tends not to work as well in open water. Here's why the two strokes are different and how you should deal with it. For starters, the requirements are different. When you're training for pool swimming, you need to be elite. You need to think about every last possible way that you can get faster in the water, and you need to get up to the very edge of human capabilities for how fast you need to even be a conversation for being a good pool swimmer. But as triathletes, we're almost all really bad swimmers, so our requirements are very basic. We don't need all of the elite swim techniques that are geared towards speed swimmers in the pool. We just need a basic technique that is going to get us from point A to point B fairly efficiently without tiring us out and without taking 14 swims a week, because we just don't have that amount of time as triathletes. So a lot of the techniques that former pool swimmers talk about are about building this absolutely perfect swim technique to get the last possible ounce of swimming performance out of you, when all of those things might take years and millions of meters of swimming to actually develop, when we don't really even need to be focused on a lot of those things as triathletes. The second thing that's different between pool and triathlon swimming is the pace. In pool swimming, you have to be really fast. Everyone is training for absolute speed over 50s, 100s, and 200s. In triathlon, we really should be thinking about the pace that we do in our race as slow and slower. The reason being that in the pool, unless you are lightning fast, you aren't even a conversation for getting on the local 14 and under swim team. Whereas in triathlon, if you go really, really fast, it's probably not going to help you in the end of the race because you can't win the triathlon in the swim. And if you burn too many matches in the swim, you're not going to have any energy for the bike and the run. So triathlon swim pace should be slow and slower, not pool swimming, which is just fast and faster. The third difference is one of the biggest areas that there is a difference between training for fast swimming in a pool and just slow, steady swimming in a triathlon, and that is with the kick. In pool swimming, you need a really, really fast kick, because a kick is not very efficient, not very helpful for propelling you forward, but if you do make that kick 1% or 2% faster, it could make the difference between first and last in a swim race that is decided by seconds. In triathlon, we actually want to kick as little as possible because we need to get onto the bike with our legs being as fresh as possible. So in the pool, instead of doing kick drills over and over and over and using zoomer fins like a lot of elite swimmers will do, we want to actually develop as slow a kick as possible to just get our heels up at the surface of the water. Keeping that kick really slow and as minimal as possible is what's going to save our legs for the bike. The fourth thing that's really different has to do with how our arms move in the pool versus in triathlon swimming. Our arm recovery and entry is different, our arm position in the water is different, and our stroke rate is different between pool and triathlon swimming. With our arm recovery and entry, in the pool we want it to be very smooth. We want it to enter very carefully, not creating any bubbles. Whereas in triathlon, we need that hand entry to be really powerful to get through waves, current, maybe even our friends who are swimming beside us. So it's much more punchy and powerful. You can see an enormous difference between Reese Barkley and Lucy Charles Barkley in this. Reese is very pretty and smooth and slow and controlled, whereas Lucy is very punchy and aggressive. The aggressive and punchy technique helps a lot more in triathlon. Related to this is the stroke rate. In the pool, there's almost no focus on stroke rate when we swim for speed in the pool. And this is because there's no current, there's no waves, there's no people around us. So gliding and extending our arms is totally okay. But in triathlon, we want the stroke rate to be really fast. We don't want any sort of glide, because the more we glide and the more delicate we are in triathlon swimming, the more there's a chance that the waves, the current, and the people around us can slow us down. We want that momentum to stay nice and high by having a nice stroke rate. And finally, when it comes to the position of the arms under the water, a lot of elite swim coaches will focus on an early vertical forearm where your elbow bends over top of your head with your fingertips pointing down at the pool, and this Gumby-like mobility in our shoulders and our elbows, which most of us triathletes can't do, and it's really unnecessary. In triathlon, we just need to make sure that we're floating efficiently at the water, and then our stroke under the water just needs to focus on pushing ourselves forward. If our arm is bent, great. If it's fairly straight, hey, that's okay. As long as our palm is pushing directly in behind us and we're moving ourselves forward, this is enough. The fourth thing that's different is our breathing. In the pool, it's very balanced. You can breathe bilaterally every 3 strokes, or you can breathe every second stroke, switching which side you breathe on. Every time you push off the wall, you can change it a little bit, but it's all a very controlled situation, so you can control where you breathe and how you breathe. As long as your body is basically being symmetrical and evened out by breathing an equal amount on the left side and the right side so that you don't develop imbalances, hey, everything's good in the pool. In triathlon, you do want to be able to breathe on both sides, but you can't control it nearly as much. We have to breathe based on the direction that the waves are coming to us from, which side swimmers are on us from, where the splash is from other swimmers, where the glare from the ocean is. It's critical that we're easily able to switch back and forth from one to the other depending on where all of these variable aspects of triathlon swimming in open water are coming from. The next thing that's very obviously different is sighting. In the pool, we don't have to sight. We look down at the bottom of the pool on the black line and boom, we are going straight. This doesn't work in triathlon, and most swim workouts tend not to focus on sighting to the detriment of a lot of triathletes. In almost all of our race season swim workouts, we have a certain portion of the swim workout where we are cueing our athletes to sight if they are preparing for a triathlon or a swim run race. The reason being that going off course by 10 meters over and over and over by only breathing once every 20 to 30 strokes, which is the average of what most triathletes do, might extend the duration and length of the swim by as much as 20%. That's why we want our athletes who train with Motive to sight every 5 to 8 strokes, and that's why we build the sighting into our workouts directly. Related to sighting, you need to see where you're going, and in the pool, you will use clear or light goggles because there isn't a huge amount of light around, and you don't have a whole bunch of glare around to keep off of the water. But in triathlon, you really shouldn't be using these clear or light goggles, and you should be using a mirrored goggle to make sure that you can get the glare off the water from the sun and really pick out those orange colors from the buoys that are in the race. Most triathlon specific open water design goggles are tinted in a way that that orange will pop out, where most pool swimming goggles will actually just dull everything and you won't be able to see any of the buoys very well. The final difference in technique between pool and triathlon swimming is that for pool swimming, body roll is mandatory. Getting that huge extension in the arm, reaching out a long way, rolling on your side and swimming on your side lat. That is a huge builder of massive power in the pool, but it's a really hard position for most of us stiff age group triathletes to be in. It's also not very necessary because it's looking at those final couple of percent Whereas in triathlon, what we should really be focused on is staying balanced in the water and keeping our shoulders in a position that they aren't getting tired out. And frankly, because most of us in triathlon are wearing a wetsuit, it's going to be really hard to roll significantly from side to side. So having that big shoulder turn, that big body rotation, where you're working really hard to try to stay balanced and your shoulder has to get in a wild position, like all of the elite pool swimmers train us to be in the pool, that isn't very necessary for triathletes. Instead, what we want to focus on in triathlon are drills that are going to build a stable body, a body that isn't wiggly, a body that is nice and taut from the tips of your toes all the way up to your shoulders and not creating a bunch of drag by everything flailing out to the side. But that body roll, not nearly as important as you might think for triathletes. Finally, the last thing, and this is a simple thing, a swim cap in the pool, optional. In triathlon, you need to have one at least, but a trick of the trade that I'll share with you here is that 2 is preferred. Even when it is very warm in the water that we're swimming in triathlon, I recommend putting on a swim cap, then putting goggles on over top of the cap, then putting your race swim cap over top of those goggles so that they don't get knocked around and knocked off your face. Triathlon is a wild, brutal sport at the swim start, and making sure that our goggles aren't going to get knocked off our face is one way to make sure that we have a better swim experience. Hopefully this clears some things up for you. If you're watching this video, you will probably love the video that is on the screen right now that will help you with our complete system for how to breathe while you are swimming in the water. Get that down and you will be well on your way to having a very controlled swim experience in triathlon. Later, motivators.